good evening, and welcome back to Starry Sleep. Tonight, we continue our journey into the hidden world of the brain. This time, we look inside, at its anatomy, its structures, its parts, and the roles they play. The human brain weighs about 3 pounds, soft, fragile, yet more complex than any machine we have ever built. It sits protected inside the skull, bathed in fluid, shielded from harm, yet always alive with activity. The brain is not one thing, but many parts, working together. At the deepest level lie the oldest structures, closer to the spinal cord, closer to survival. Above them, newer structures evolved, adding layers of complexity, adding layers of mind. Let us begin with the brainstem. The brainstem is ancient. It controls the basics of life: breathing, heartbeat, swallowing, sleep and wake cycles. It is automatic. We do not think about it, but without it, we could not survive a moment. Above the brainstem lies the cerebellum. The cerebellum means little brain, and though small, it holds more neurons than the rest of the brain combined. It fine-tunes movement, balances posture, coordinates timing. When you walk, when you dance, when you play music, the cerebellum is guiding you, quietly, smoothly. Wrapped around these deeper parts is the limbic system. Here lives emotion and memory. The amygdala alerts us to fear, colors our experiences with feeling. The hippocampus records events, turns moments into memories, helps us find our way in space. Together, they shape who we are. They link past with present. They help us decide what matters. And then, above all, the great neocortex. This is the folded sheet that makes up most of the visible brain. Each ridge, each groove, adds surface, adds room for more neurons. Here, language is formed, reason unfolds, vision is processed, ideas are imagined. The neocortex is what makes us human. The neocortex itself has regions, each with its own focus. At the back, the occipital lobe processes vision. Every image you see begins here, above the ears. The temporal lobes handle sound, language, and recognition of faces. At the top, the parietal lobes guide touch, spatial awareness, and attention. At the front, the frontal lobes shape planning, decision, and personality. Yet no part works alone. Vision depends on memory. Language depends on hearing. Movement depends on balance. The brain is a network of constant communication. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, firing every moment, binding the parts into one. At the microscopic scale, the brain is made of neurons. Each neuron, a tiny cell, with a body, with branches to receive signals, with an axon to send signals. They talk with chemicals at junctions called synapses, passing messages in milliseconds. It is through these cells that thought arises, that memory is stored, that consciousness itself emerges. When you look at the brain, you see layers of history. The brainstem, oldest of all, keeper of survival. The cerebellum, master of coordination. The limbic system, seat of memory and emotion. The neocortex, canvas of thought and imagination. As you listen, picture the brain inside your skull, silent to the outside, but alive with storms of activity. Breath guided by the brainstem, balance shaped by the cerebellum, memories written by the hippocampus, dreams imagined by the cortex. The anatomy of the brain is not only structure, it is function. It is history. It is the architecture of the self. Tonight, you have seen within the hidden landscape of the brain, from the ancient stem to the folded cortex. And as we continue, we will dive deeper into the signals within, the rhythms and sparks that bring the brain to life. Now, let your own brain rest. Let its networks settle. Let its rhythm slow. And as sleep takes you, remember, this organ of silence is your constant companion, keeper of life, and maker of mind. Tonight, we journey deeper inside the brain, to watch the hidden machine at work. Not the outer folds, not the anatomy you can see, but the signals, the sparks, the rhythms of life itself. The brain is alive because of its cells, neurons, and glial cells, working together. Each neuron is a tiny unit of thought, a messenger, a processor, a bridge. You carry about 86 billion of them inside your head, each one connected to thousands of others, forming networks beyond imagination. A neuron has parts: the cell body, the soma, where life is maintained, the dendrites, branches that reach outward, collecting signal. It's from others. The axon, a long fiber that sends messages forward, and at the end, tiny terminals releasing chemicals across the synapse. The synapse is the gap between neurons, so small, so delicate, yet it is here. That thought is passed. An electrical impulse travels down the axon, reaches the terminal, and triggers chemicals to be released. These chemicals, called neurotransmitters, drift across the tiny gap and bind to receptors on the next cell. In this way, the message continues, from neuron to neuron, from one spark to a wave of activity. The firing of a neuron is called an action potential. It is a burst of electricity, a change in voltage, that runs along the axon. It lasts only a millisecond, but in that brief flash, information is carried billions of times per second across billions of cells. This is the music of the brain. Different chemicals shape the messages. Glutamate excites, driving neurons to fire. GABA calms, inhibiting activity, balancing the storm. Dopamine signals reward, motivation, and learning. Serotonin guides mood, happiness, and calm. Acetylcholine sharpens attention and helps memory form. Each neurotransmitter, a note in the symphony. But neurons are not alone. Glial cells surround them, once thought of as support only, now known to guide signals, to nourish neurons, to clear waste, to shape connections. They are the silent partners, keeping the system alive. When networks of neurons fire together, they form patterns, rhythms, oscillations, slow waves during deep sleep, spindles of activity as memories consolidate, fast gamma waves during thought and perception. These rhythms are the brain's hidden music, binding faraway regions into harmony. From a single neuron spark to waves across the cortex, this is how the brain communicates. It is not one voice, but billions in chorus. Not random, but orchestrated. By chemistry, by electricity, by rhythm. As you listen, picture the hidden storm inside your head. Tiny sparks flashing, signals leaping across gaps, chemicals drifting, networks humming in unison. It is silent to the outside, but within, it is a universe of activity. This inner machine is the foundation of everything. Every thought, every memory, every dream begins as a spark, a signal across a synapse. Tonight, you have seen the invisible engine, the neuron, the action potential, the synapse, the neurotransmitters, the rhythms of the brain. And as we go forward, we will see how these signals build memory, how they shape learning, how they become the mind itself. Now, let your own signals slow. Let your rhythms settle. Let the storm quiet. And as you drift into sleep, remember, your brain, even in dreams, is still alive with sparks, still writing the hidden music of the mind. We follow the signals of the brain into one of its most mysterious powers, memory, the ability to hold the past, to carry it forward, to weave it into the present, and to guide the future. Memory is not one thing, it is many things, different systems, working together. There is short-term memory, holding information for moments, a phone number, a sentence you just heard. There is working memory, holding and manipulating thoughts, doing math in your head, remembering directions while walking. There is long-term memory, storing knowledge across a lifetime, your childhood home, the face of a friend, the skills of walking and speaking. Long-term memory itself has many kinds. Episodic memory, personal experiences. The first time you rode a bike, a family dinner long ago. Semantic memory, facts and knowledge that Paris is in France, that 2 plus 2 is 4. Procedural memory, skills and habits, typing on a keyboard, riding a bicycle, playing the piano. These systems are written in different parts of the brain. The hippocampus records episodes, turns moments into lasting traces. The neocortex stores facts, knowledge spread across networks. The basal ganglia and the cerebellum keep habits and motor skills, silent memories that guide your hands and feet. We know this through stories of people whose memories were broken. The famous case of H.M., whose hippocampus was removed to stop seizures. He could not form new memories of events, but he could learn new skills, unaware that he was learning. This showed us that memory is not one thing, but many systems, each with its own place. Memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. Each time you recall, you rebuild the memory, changing it slightly, mixing past with present. This is why memories fade, why they shift, why two people can recall the same event differently. Sleep plays a role in memory. During deep sleep, the hippocampus replays events, sending them to the cortex for long-term storage. During dreams, the brain weaves memories together, mixing old with new, creating stories that never happened, but shaped by things that did. Forgetting is as important as remembering. Without forgetting, the mind would overflow. Every detail kept, every moment stored, making it impossible to focus on what matters. Forgetting clears space. It lets the important remain and lets the unneeded fade. Memory changes with age. In childhood, it is fragile, easily shaped, easily lost. In adolescence, it grows strong, vivid and emotional, guiding identity. In old age, some memories fade, but others deepen. Stories of long ago stay bright, even as yesterday dims. Memory is not only about the past, it is also about the future. When we imagine tomorrow, we use the same brain systems that recall yesterday. The hippocampus that binds episodes also builds imagined scenes. To remember and to plan are two sides of the same coin. As you listen, think of a memory from your life, perhaps a moment of joy or a quiet afternoon. Notice how it feels. Notice how it changes as you recall it. This is the work of the brain, rebuilding the past, shaping the present, and guiding the future. The systems of memory are many, but together they form the thread of your life. Without memory, there is no cell, no continuity, no story to tell. With memory, we are more than the present moment. We are beings in time, carrying the past and reaching for the future. Tonight, you have walked through memory's halls, from the hippocampus to the cortex, to the hidden skills of habit. You have seen that memory is not a library, but a living system, constantly changing, constantly renewing. Now, let your own memories rest. Let the day's events settle. Let sleep weave them into the story of your life. And as you drift deeper, remember, the brain that holds your past is also shaping your dreams and preparing your future. We follow the brain into its gift of learning and its power of plasticity, the ability to change, to adapt, to rewire, to grow. Learning is not a single act. It is a process that shapes the brain itself. Each time you practice, each time you study, each time you experience, your brain is altered. Slightly, quietly, permanently. At the heart of learning is a simple rule known as Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When two cells are active at the same time, their connection strengthens. The signal flows more easily. The bond grows firmer. This is how patterns form, how habits take root, how skills become second nature. In the laboratory, this rule is seen as long-term potentiation. or LTP. When a synapse is used again and again, it becomes more efficient. The response grows stronger, the pathway more stable. This is the physical trace of learning, written in the sex connections of cells. Plasticity is the brain's ability to reshape itself. In childhood, plasticity is high. The brain is flexible, quick to learn language, quick to adapt. In adulthood, plasticity is slower, but still alive. Practice can rewire circuits. New skills can still be gained. Even in old age, the brain can change. Musicians who practice for years show enlarged areas for finger control. Taxi drivers who navigate complex cities show larger hippocampi for mapping space. Practice leaves marks, carved in tissue, etched in connections. Plasticity also repairs. When the brain is injured, other regions can take over. Functions can shift. New pathways can form. After a stroke, therapy can train the brain to use alternate routes, to recover lost abilities. It is not perfect, but it is hope, a testament to resilience. Plasticity also hides in silence. When you learn a new language, your cortex reorganizes to store its sounds and rules. When you learn to play an instrument, your motor areas and auditory areas grow in harmony. When you meditate, networks for attention and emotion strengthen and calm. But plasticity is not endless. There are critical periods, windows in development, when certain skills are easiest to learn. Language in early childhood, vision in the first months of life, attachment and emotion in infancy. Miss these windows, and learning is harder, but never impossible. Plasticity is also shaped by use. What you practice grows stronger. What you neglect fades away. Like muscles, neural connections follow the rule. Use it or lose it. Learning changes the brain, but it also changes the self. Every skill, every memory, every habit becomes part of who you are. The brain is not fixed. It is a living record of experience, always in motion. As you listen, think of something you once learned. Perhaps how to ride a bicycle, how to play a song, how to speak in another tongue. That knowledge lives in your brain, not as words, but as circuits, strengthened through practice. The brain you carry today is not the one you had yesterday. It has been shaped by all you have seen, all you have done, all you have felt. It is plastic. It is alive. It is always becoming. Tonight, you have walked through the pathways of learning, the rules of Hebbian change, the promise of plasticity. You have seen that the brain is not stone, but clay, molded by life and remolded again. Now, let your own circuits rest. Let the connections settle. Let the rhythms quiet. And as you drift deeper, remember, your brain is learning still, even in dreams, even in silence, always shaping, always becoming. We follow the brain into its most mysterious state. Sleep, not an absence of activity, but a different rhythm, a hidden theater where memory is shaped and dreams are born. For centuries, sleep was seen as silence, a shutting down, a pause in life. But science has revealed that sleep is not the end of activity. It is a symphony of patterns, a cycle of stages, each with its own role. The night is divided into repeating cycles, each lasting about 90 minutes. First comes light sleep. The body relaxes, the heart slows, the brain drifts gently. Then comes deep sleep. Slow waves roll across the cortex. Cells fire in harmony. The body heals. The mind restores. Then comes REM sleep, rapid eye movement. The brain grows active again. Dreams unfold. Emotions stir. Memories weave together. And then the cycle repeats, again and again, through the night. Memory is shaped in these stages. During deep sleep, the hippocampus replays events, sending traces to the cortex. For long-term storage, a day's learning becomes tomorrow's knowledge. Through this silent rehearsal, During REM sleep, emotions are processed, experiences are integrated. The brain takes fragments of memory and stitches them into dreams. Dreams may seem strange, but they are built from the raw material of memory, shuffled and reshaped to make sense of life. Without sleep, memory suffers. Students deprived of sleep struggle to recall what they studied. Workers who stay awake all night forget details, miss patterns, lose focus. Sleep is not a luxury. It is part of learning itself. Forgetting also happens in sleep. The brain does not keep everything. Some connections are pruned. Some details are let go. This clearing prevents overload. It allows important traces to strengthen and unneeded noise to fade. In children, sleep is rich and deep, supporting growth and the explosion of learning. In adults, sleep consolidates skill, knowledge, and emotional balance. In elders, sleep grows lighter, but still, it shapes memory and protects the mind. Sleep links past and future. What you study today is written more deeply. If you sleep tonight, what you feel today is softened or sharpened by the dreams you enter. Sleep is the bridge between experience and memory. As you listen, feel the rhythm of your own body, the slowing breath, the quieting mind. This is the entrance to the same cycles that guide all human sleep. The brain never rests. Even in dreams, it replays, it reshapes, it restores. The night is the brain's secret workshop. Tonight, you have seen that sleep is not silence, but structure. That memory is not fixed, but built anew in the night. That dreams are not random, but the weaving of emotion and memory. Now, let your own sleep begin. Let your hippocampus replay. Let your cortex receive. Let your dreams weave gently. And as you drift deeper, remember, the night is not empty. It is the hidden classroom of the brain, where memory is made and the self is renewed. We open the window into one of the brain's most delicate powers, attention and working memory. The ability to focus, the ability to hold thoughts in mind, the ability to guide behavior, moment by moment. Attention is like a spotlight. It shines on one part of the world and leaves the rest in shadow. It selects what matters and filters what does not. Without attention, the world would be overwhelming. Every sound, RY sight, every touch, arriving at once. Attention brings order to the flood of sensation. Working memory is the stage on which attention plays. It is the small mental space where thoughts are held and used. You use it when you remember a phone number long enough to dial it. You use it when you keep the start of a sentence in mind as you hear the end. You use it when you do math in your head or follow directions step by step. Working memory is brief, fragile, but essential. The frontal lobes, especially the prefrontal cortex, guide these powers. They hold goals in mind. They direct attention. They keep information active. Without the prefrontal cortex, the spotlight fades. The stage goes dark. Behavior loses direction. Scientists describe working memory as having parts: a phonological loop that holds sounds and words, a visuospatial sketchpad that holds images and places, and a central executive that coordinates both, deciding what to focus on and what to ignore. Attention itself has many forms. There is sustained attention, keeping focus over time. There is selective attention, choosing one signal among many distractions. There is divided attention, shifting between tasks, though always with limits. The networks of attention spread across the brain. The parietal lobes guide where in space to look. The frontal lobes decide what matters. The midbrain generates the reflex to turn to sudden sights or sounds. Together, they form a system that lets us act with purpose. Working memory is limited. Most people can hold about 7 items at once, plus or minus 2. This limit shapes thought itself. It is why phone numbers are short, why we break information into chunks, why learning relies on rehearsal. Rehearsal is how working memory becomes long-term memory. Repeat a word, and it moves from short-term space into lasting traces. Practice a skill, and it shifts from fragile storage to automatic habit. Working memory is the gateway to learning. Disorders of attention reveal its fragility. In ADHD, the spotlight flickers, unable to hold steady. In brain injury, the stage can collapse, memories vanish before they can be used. As you listen, notice your own attention. Notice how it follows these words. Notice how your mind wanders and gently returns. This is working memory. This is attention at work in you. The power to focus, the power to hold thoughts. These are small gifts, yet they shape everything. Without them, we could not plan, we could not reason, we could not learn. Tonight, you have seen the spotlight of attention, the stage of working memory, the networks that guide them, and the limits they face. Now, let your own attention rest. Let the spotlight dim. Let the stage clear. And as you drift into sleep, remember, the thoughts you carry are guided by fragile lights, but together, they create the theater of the mind. We journey into the hidden forces that shape our every thought, our every decision, our every memory. Emotion. For Saint Uri's, emotion was seen as separate from reason, a storm that clouded the mind, a weakness to be controlled. But science shows that emotion is not the enemy of reason. It is its partner, its guide, its fuel. At the center of emotion lies the amygdala, two almond-shaped clusters deep within the temporal lobes. The amygdala detects threat. It colors experience with fear. It adds urgency to action. Without the amygdala, the world would be flat, danger unnoticed, urgency absent. Close to the amygdala lies the hippocampus, where memory is formed. Together, they make emotional memories vivid, moments of joy or trauma etched more deeply than ordinary days. The prefrontal cortex sits above the eyes, shaping emotion into decision. It calms fear. It weighs reward against risk. It lets us pause before we act. Without it, emotion can overwhelm. With it, emotion becomes wisdom. Another key system is the brain's reward pathway. Dopamine flows from deep structures like the ventral tegmental area to the nucleus accumbens and the frontal lobes. This system signals pleasure and learning. It teaches the brain to repeat what feels good, to seek what brings reward. But reward is not only about pleasure, it is about motivation. Without dopamine, life loses drive. Food has no taste, music no joy, action no purpose. Other chemicals shape emotion too. Serotonin balances mood, bringing calm and stability. Oxytocin supports bonding, trust, and love. Norepinephrine adds alertness, urgency, and focus. Each chemical, a shade in the palette of feeling. Emotion also guides the body. Fear quickens the heart. Anger raises blood pressure. Joy relaxes muscles. Sadness lowers energy. The brain and body are one system. Emotion flows through both. Emotion is ancient. Animals share it. Fear in a mouse. Joy in a dog. Grief in an elephant. It is not only human. It is life itself, expressed in feeling. But in humans, emotion also shapes culture. Art and music, born of feeling, spread across minds. Stories and myths, carrying joy, fear, and hope, bind societies together. Emotion and memory are inseparable. Moments of strong feeling are remembered more vividly. The day of a celebration, the shock of loss. These memories guide future choices, remind us what matters. Disorders of emotion reveal its power. Depression, when sadness becomes unending. Anxiety, when fear is constant. Addiction, when reward pathways are hijacked. Each shows that emotion is not decoration, but foundation. As you listen, Notice your own feelings. Even now, calm, curiosity, perhaps a gentle peace. These too are patterns in your brain, signals flowing, chemicals shifting. The brain is not cold logic. It is warm emotion. It is both, always together. Reason without feeling is empty. Feeling without reason is blind. Together, they make us human. Tonight, you have walked through the amygdala of fear, the hippocampus of memory, the prefrontal cortex of control, and the reward pathways of joy. You have seen that emotion is not a weakness, but the heartbeat of the mind. Now, let your own feelings rest. Let calm spread through you. Let peace take root. And as you drift into sleep, remember, emotion and reason are not enemies. They are companions, guiding every step of life. This time, we look inside, at its anatomy, its structures, its parts, and the roles they play. The human brain weighs about 3 pounds, soft, fragile, yet more complex than any machine we have ever built. It sits protected, inside the skull, bathed in fluid, shielded from harm, yet always alive with activity. The brain is not one thing, but many parts, working together. At the deepest level lie the oldest structures, closer to the spinal cord, closer to survival. Above them, newer structures evolved, adding layers of complexity, adding layers of mind. Let us begin with the brainstem. The brainstem is ancient. It controls the basics of life: breathing, heartbeat, swallowing, sleep and wake cycles. It is automatic. We do not think about it, but without it, we could not survive a moment. Above the brainstem lies the cerebellum. The cerebellum means little brain, and though small, it holds more neurons than the rest of the brain combined. It fine-tunes movement, balances posture, coordinates timing. When you walk, when you dance, when you play music, the cerebellum is guiding you, quietly, smoothly. Wrapped around these deeper parts is the limbic system. Here lives emotion and memory. The amygdala alerts us to fear, colors our experiences with feeling. The hippocampus records events, turns moments into memories, helps us find our way in space. Together, they shape who we are. They link past with present. They help us decide what matters. And then, above all, the great neocortex. This is the folded sheet that makes up most of the visible brain. Each ridge, each groove, adds surface, adds room for more neurons. Here, language is formed, reason unfolds, vision is processed, ideas are imagined. The neocortex is what makes us human. The neocortex itself has regions, each with its own focus. At the back, the occipital lobe processes vision. Every image you see begins here. Above the ears, the temporal lobes handle sound, language, and recognition of faces. At the top, the parietal lobes guide touch, spatial awareness, and attention. At the front, the frontal lobes shape planning, decision, and personality. Yet no part works alone. Vision depends on memory. Language depends on hearing. Movement depends on balance. The brain is a network of constant communication. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, firing every moment, binding the parts into one. At the microscopic scale, the brain is made of neurons. Each neuron, a tiny cell, with a body, with branches to receive signals, with an axon to send signals. They talk with chemicals, at junctions called synapses, passing messages in milliseconds. It is through these cells that thought arises, that memory is stored, that consciousness itself emerges. When you look at the brain, you see layers of history. The brain stem, oldest of all, keeper of survival. The cerebellum, master of coordination. The limbic system, seat of memory and emotion. The neocortex, canvas of thought and imagination. As you listen, picture the brain inside your skull, silent to the outside, but alive with storms of activity. Breath guided by the brainstem, balance shaped by the cerebellum, memories written by the hippocampus, dreams imagined by the cortex. The anatomy of the brain is not only structure, it is function. It is history. It is the architecture of the self. Tonight, you have seen within the hidden landscape of the brain, from the ancient stem to the folded cortex. And as we continue, we will dive deeper into the signals within, the rhythms and sparks that bring the brain to life. Now, let your own brain rest. Let its network settle. Let its rhythm slow. And as sleep takes you, remember, this organ of silence is your constant companion, keeper of life, and maker of mind. We explore how the brain connects us to the world through sensation and perception, the raw signals of the senses, and the meanings the brain gives them. Sensation is simple. It is the input, light on the eye, sound in the ear, pressure on the skin. Perception is deeper. It is the brain's interpretation, turning signals into sight, into sound, into touch. Let us begin with vision. At the back of the eye, the retina collects light, rods sense darkness, cones sense color. Signals travel along the optic nerve, into the brain, to the occipital lobe. Here, at the visual cortex, images are built, edges detected, motion tracked, colors combined, from simple dots of light to a rich world of shapes and faces. Hearing begins in the ear. Sound waves, vibrations in the air, move the eardrum and tiny bones within. These vibrations reach the cochlea, a spiral filled with fluid, and tiny hair cells. Each hair cell responds to a frequency. Together, they translate vibration into signals. These signals travel into the auditory cortex, where the brain hears speech, music, and meaning. Touch covers the whole body. Receptors in the skin detect pressure, temperature, pain. Signals rise through the spinal cord to the somatosensory cortex. At the top of the brain, here, a map of the body is laid out, each part represented, each touch recorded. Smell is ancient. Molecules drift through the air, bind to receptors in the nose. Signals bypass the thalamus and travel directly to the olfactory bulb. I'm there. They reach the limbic system, where memory and emotion live. This is why smells can unlock the past, a scent of food, a trace of perfume, and suddenly, you are a child again. Taste works with smell, together creating flavor. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty, umami, each detected by receptors on the tongue, each sent to the brain, where taste and smell merge into the richness of eating. Perception is more than sensation. The brain fills gaps, adds meaning, shapes what you see and hear. Two lines may look different in length, though they are the same, because the brain adds depth, adds context. Voices and noise can be understood, because the brain predicts, fills in missing pieces. Perception is construction, not just reception. The senses do not work alone. Vision guides touch, hearing guides movement, smell guides taste. In the brain, signals combine, creating multisensory experiences. Seeing lips move helps you understand speech. Hearing a crackling fire makes the warmth feel stronger. The senses weave together, into a seamless world. Disorders reveal the system. Blindness shows the reliance on sight. Deafness shows the importance of sound. But the brain can adapt. In the blind, touch and hearing grow sharper. The visual cortex learns to read Braille by touch. In the deaf, vision expands. The auditory cortex responds to motion and sign language. The brain reshapes to keep perception alive. As you listen, notice your own senses, the feel of air on your skin, the sound of this voice, the images forming in your mind. Each is sensation. Each is shaped into perception by your brain. The world is not just outside, it is inside, constructed moment by moment, by neural patterns, by memory, by attention. Tonight, you have seen the eye and vision, the ear and hearing, the skin and touch, the nose and smell, the tongue and taste. You have seen that perception is not a mirror, but a painting created by the brain. Now, let your senses rest. Let sight grow dim. Let sound grow soft. Let touch grow still. And as you drift deeper, remember, the world you know lives inside you, shaped by the quiet work of your brain. We explore one of the most human powers, the ability to connect, to understand, to share. The social brain. Humans are not solitary. We are born to live with others, to learn from others, to survive together. The brain is shaped by relationships, by family, by culture, by community. At the heart of the social brain are mirror neurons. Discovered in monkeys, they fire not only when an action is done, but when an action is seen. When you watch someone lift a cup, your neurons echo the movement, as if you lifted it yourself. This mirroring is the basis of empathy, of learning by imitation, of feeling what others feel. Another key network is the default mode network. It activates when the mind turns inward, thinking of the self or of others, imagining intentions, or remembering stories. This network links social thought with memory and imagination. The amygdala again plays its role. It reads emotion in faces. It signals trust or threat. It guides social response. The prefrontal cortex adds judgment, weighs fairness, controls impulse. Together, they allow cooperation and society. Language is another gift of the social brain. It lets thoughts travel from one mind into another. It creates shared meaning, shared culture, shared history. Without language, social bonds would be thin. With it, civilization is possible. Emotion spreads socially. A smile can trigger another smile. A yawn can ripple through a group. Fear can be contagious. So can laughter. This contagion is the brain's design for synchrony, for unity. The social brain begins early. Infants tune to faces, to voices, to touch. Children learn by watching, by copying, by joining play. Adolescents seek peers. Identity shaped by groups. Adults weave families, communities, societies. At every stage, the brain is shaped by others. Disorders of the social brain show its importance. In autism spectrum conditions, the reading of social cues becomes difficult. In psychopathy, emotion fails to guide morality. In isolation, the brain suffers. Loneliness is as harmful as hunger or pain. The social brain is not optional, it is essential. Culture itself lives in brains, and between them, stories told across generations, beliefs shared in rituals, norms enforced by groups. The brain both creates culture and is created by it. As you listen, notice how even now, this connection exists. A voice to an ear, an idea crossing space, from one mind to another. This too is the social brain at work. The self is not only I, it is also we. The mind is not alone. It is part of a network, woven through time, woven through relationships. Tonight, you have seen mirror neurons of empathy. networks of imagination, the amygdala of trust, the language of culture. You have seen that the brain is not only for thought, but for connection. Now, let your own social brain rest. Let worries of others soften. Let calm connection remain. And as you drift into sleep, remember, you are not alone. Your brain is part of a greater web, the endless network of minds that makes us human. We journey through time, following the brain from its earliest beginnings to the many stages of life. The developing brain. The story begins before birth. In the womb, cells divide at astonishing speed. Neurons are born by the millions, each finding its place, each preparing for connection. By the time of birth, the brain already holds most of the neurons it will ever have, but the connections are still to be made. At birth, the brain is small, but full of potential. An infant's brain is wired to learn, to absorb, to adapt. Every touch, every sound, every face leaves a trace, shapes a pathway. In early childhood, the brain grows explosively. Synapses form by the billions. Networks expand. Connections outnumber those in adulthood. It is a time of abundance, of openness, of learning without effort. Language is absorbed simply by hearing. Walking is learned simply by trying. The brain is plastic, and the world is its teacher. But this abundance is not permanent. By school age, the brain begins to prune. Connections unused are trimmed away. Connections often used grow stronger. This pruning shapes efficiency. It sculpts the mind to fit the environment. Adolescence brings change again. The brain grows unevenly. The limbic system, seat of emotion, becomes powerful early. The prefrontal cortex, seat of judgment and control, lags behind. This imbalance explains the risk-taking, the intensity of feeling, the hunger for peers. It is a time of exploration and a time of vulnerability. By early adulthood, the brain finds balance. The prefrontal cortex matures. Impulse and reason align. Planning becomes sharper. Identity settles. The brain is at its peak, flexible yet stable, capable of learning, capable of mastery. Through adulthood, the brain adapts to demands. Parenting, work, creativity, problem-solving. Plasticity continues, though slower. Skills can be gained. Habits can be changed. The brain remains alive, always becoming. In later life, the brain changes again. Some memories fade, processing slows, but wisdom grows. Connections of meaning deepen. The aging brain finds new balance, trading speed for perspective, trading novelty for depth. Disorders of development reveal the brain's fragility. Autism changes social wiring. ADHD shapes attention and impulse. Learning difficulties alter pathways of reading and math. Yet, in each case, the brain adapts. Other circuits strengthen. New strategies arise. The developing brain is not a straight path. It is a landscape of growth and pruning, of leaps and pauses, of gains and losses. As you listen, think of your own path, the language you learned as a child, the risks you took as a teen, the skills you gained as an adult. Each stage left marks on your brain, shaping who you are today. The brain is never finished. It is always unfolding, always renewing. From the womb to old age, it is a story of change. Tonight, you have followed the infant's abundance, the child's pruning, the teen's imbalance, the adult's mastery, and the elder's wisdom. You have seen that the brain is not fixed at birth, but sculpted by life. Now, let your own brain rest. Let today's experiences settle. Let sleep continue the shaping. And as you drift into dreams, remember, you too carry the marks of time, etched in circuits, carved in memory, written in the brain's unfolding story. We walk with the brain into its final chapters, the story of aging, the aging brain. From the moment of birth, the brain begins its journey through time, changing, adapting, learning, and eventually slowing. In youth, neurons are plentiful. Connections are abundant. In adulthood, networks stabilize. Efficiency grows. But in later life, the brain shifts again. Some pathways weaken. Some memories fade. Processing slows. Yet aging is not only decline. The brain also gains. New ways of seeing. New ways of understanding. Wisdom. Perspective. The ability to find meaning. These grow stronger with age. Structurally, the aging brain shows changes. The hippocampus shrinks gradually, making new memories harder to form. The prefrontal cortex thins with time, slowing decision and planning. White matter, the wiring between regions, loses strength, slowing communication. But not all is lost. Other networks adapt. Circuits reroute. The brain recruits new regions. To support old functions, older adults often use both hemispheres. For tasks where the young use only one, this compensation keeps function alive. Even as tissue declines, memory changes with age. Episodic memory, personal events, grows fragile. Semantic memory, facts and knowledge, remains strong. Procedural memory, skills and habits, often last the longest. This is why an elder may forget a name, but still play a piano, still speak a language, still cook a meal from memory. Emotion also changes. The aging brain responds less to negative events and more to positive ones. This positivity bias brings calm and balance. Elders often report greater well-being, even with slower minds. Diseases of aging show the brain's vulnerability. Alzheimer's disease destroys memory networks. Parkinson's disease damages movement circuits. Dementia erodes thought and personality. These disorders remind us of the brain's fragility and the importance of care. But aging is not fate alone. Lifestyle matters. Exercise increases blood flow, supports plasticity. Learning keeps circuits alive, strengthens reserves. Social connection protects against decline, keeps the mind engaged. Sleep restores memory. Even in later years, the choices we make shape the brain's path. As you listen, think of an elder you know, perhaps a grandparent, perhaps yourself in the future. See how the years bring both losses and gains. Slower recall, but deeper wisdom. Weaker speed, but stronger meaning. The aging brain is not only an ending, it is a transformation. From speed to depth, from novelty to perspective. Tonight, you have seen the shrinking hippocampus, the adapting networks, the fragile memories, and the lasting skills. You have seen that aging is not only decline, but change, a new balance, a new story. Now, let your own brain rest. Let it restore itself in sleep. Let it find balance between effort and calm. And as you drift into dreams, remember, the brain you carry is aging every day, but it is also gaining wisdom, perspective, and peace. Tonight, we step into the deepest mystery of the mind. Consciousness, the feeling of being aware, the sense of self, the stream of experience that flows from moment to moment. For centuries, philosophers ask, what is consciousness? Is it the soul? Is it the mind? Is it simply the activity of the brain? Science does not yet have a final answer, but it has begun to map the territory. One theory is the global workspace, the id, EA, that the brain is full of unconscious processes. But when information becomes global, shared across many regions, it becomes conscious, like a spotlight, shining on a stage, making one actor visible, while the rest remain in shadow. Another theory is integrated information. It suggests that consciousness arises from the degree of connection, the amount of integration across the brain. The more unified the system, the richer the experience. A third idea is recurrent processing. Signals in the brain do not only flow forward, from sense to cortex. They loop back, again and again. This looping, this feedback, may give rise to awareness. Different networks support consciousness. The thalamus, deep in the brain, acts as a relay, coordinating signals. The cortex, especially the prefrontal and parietal lobes, integrates information across vision, hearing, touch, and thought. The default mode network supports self-reflection, daydreaming, and the sense of being I. Disorders reveal the mystery. In coma, awareness is gone, though the brain still shows activity. In vegetative state, the body cycles through sleep and wake, but consciousness may not return. In locked-in syndrome, the mind is awake, but the body cannot move. Each shows that consciousness and behavior are not always the same. Dreams are another clue. During sleep, we are unconscious of the world, yet we have vivid experiences within. This shows that consciousness does not require input from outside. It can arise from the brain alone. Animals, too, show signs of awareness. Crows that plan for tomorrow, dolphins that recognize themselves in mirrors, elephants that mourn their dead. Perhaps consciousness is not only human, but a spectrum across life. Still, the greatest mystery remains. Why should signals and sparks give rise to feeling? Why does matter produce mind? This is the hard problem of consciousness, still unanswered, still open. As you listen, notice your own awareness, the sound of these words, the rhythm of your breath, the calm in your body. This is consciousness. In its simplest form, consciousness is fragile, yet profound. It can vanish in sleep, in anesthesia, in injury, and yet return, as if nothing was lost. Tonight, you have seen the theories of workspace, integration, and recurrence. You have seen the networks of cortex and thalamus, the mysteries of dreams and coma, and you have seen that consciousness is both everywhere and nowhere. Now, let your own awareness soften. Let thought dissolve. Let self grow quiet. And as you drift into sleep, remember, the mystery of consciousness is not far away. It is here. It is you. It is this very moment of being. We walk into a more fragile chapter of the brain's story, its disorders, and its vulnerabilities. For the brain, though powerful, is delicate and can falter in many ways. Some disorders are diseases of memory. Alzheimer's disease gradually erases the hippocampus and the networks of memory. Early on, recent events fade. Aims are lost. Conversations slip away. Later, even long-held memories dissolve, and the self itself begins to fracture. It is a disease of forgetting that robs both patient and family. Another is Parkinson's disease. It strikes the circuits of movement, the basal ganglia, and dopamine pathways. The body trembles, movement slow, balance falters, yet the mind may remain sharp, even as the body struggles. Other disorders strike thought itself. Schizophrenia disrupts perception and belief. Voices may be heard that are not there. Thoughts may scatter. Reality may break. It shows how fragile the boundary of mind can be. Depression is another shadow. More than sadness, it is a deep change in brain chemistry and networks of mood. The prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and serotonin pathways shift into imbalance. Energy fades. Hope disappears. Even joy feels unreachable. Anxiety is the twin of depression. The amygdala becomes overactive. Fear signals fire too strongly. The heart races. The mind loops with worry. It is a state of constant alarm. Even in safety, addiction is a hijacking of the brain's reward system. Dopamine circuits, built for survival, are captured by substances or behaviors. Pleasure becomes narrowed. All motivation turns to one pursuit, even as harm grows. It is learning gone wrong, reward gone astray. There are disorders of development, autism spectrum conditions, shape social wiring, making faces, voices, and social cues harder to read. ADHD alters attention. 2H. E-spotlight flickers. The stage of working memory unsteady. These conditions do not erase ability, but change how the brain engages. There are disorders of trauma. A blow to the head can tear networks apart, changing memory, personality, or movement. Post-traumatic stress can keep fear alive. Long after danger is past, the amygdala stays vigilant. The hippocampus replays the moment. Sleep is filled with nightmares. The past intrudes on the present, yet even in disorder, the brain shows resilience. Therapies can train new pathways. Medicines can balance chemicals. Support can restore function. Plasticity offers hope, even when circuits are damaged. The brain seeks to heal, to adapt, to continue. As you listen, know that disorders of the brain are not weakness. They are conditions, born of biology and experience. They remind us that the brain is not invincible, but human, delicate, and alive. The study of disorders also teaches us about the normal brain. Alzheimer's reveals how memory is stored. Parkinson's reveals how movement is guided. Schizophrenia reveals how perception is built. Each shadow illuminates the light. Tonight, you have seen the fading memory of Alzheimer's, the trembling of Parkinson's, the fractured thought of schizophrenia, the heavy fog of depression, the restless fire of anxiety, the hijacking of addiction, the challenges of development, and the scars of trauma. You have seen that disorder is part of the brain's story. Now, let your own mind rest. Let woe rise, soften. Let calm remain. And as you drift into dreams, remember, the brain may falter, but it also endures. It learns. It heals. It seeks balance. Even in the face of shadow, we turn to the meeting point between science and imagination, the brain and technology, tools that let us see inside, tools that let us heal, and even tools that may one day merge mind and machine. For centuries, the brain was hidden, locked within the skull, unseen in its living state. Doctors could only guess, from injury and illness, what parts did what. But technology opened the skull without cutting, revealed the living brain in action. The first great step was the EEG, electrodes on the scalp, measuring waves of activity, the rhythm of sleep, the spikes of seizures, the pulses of thought. It showed that the brain was never silent, even in dreams. It hummed with patterns. Then came CT scans and MRI. X-rays and magnets built images of the brain, layer by layer, without harm. For the first time, we could see tumors, strokes, and the shape of tissue inside the living head. fMRI went further. It tracked blood flow, moment by moment, revealing networks, lighting up with tasks. See a face, and the fusiform area glows. Move a hand, and the motor cortex shines. We began to map the living mind. Other tools probe more deeply. Magnetoencephalography captures the tiniest fields, generated by neurons. PET scans follow tracers in the blood, revealing metabolism and chemistry. Each tool, a wind, into the hidden. Technology also heals. Deep brain stimulation places electrodes inside, sending pulses that calm tremors. In Parkinson's disease, cochlear implants restore hearing by sending signals directly to the auditory nerve. Retinal implants give sight to the blind by stimulating the eye's circuits. Brain-computer interfaces are the next frontier. Electrodes on the surface, or even inside, record signals of intention. These signals can move a cursor, control a robotic arm, or even type words by thought alone. For the paralyzed, it offers freedom. For the future, it hints at merging. Artificial intelligence learns from the brain, and now helps study the brain. Neural networks inspired by biology, now decode fMRI scans, predict seizures, or mimic speech from silent signals. But with these powers come questions. How much should we change the brain? How far should we merge with machines? What is therapy, and what is enhancement? The ethics of technology are as complex as the brain itself. Still, the union grows. Technology reveals the brain, and the brain inspires technology. Each advances the other. Each opens new doors. As you listen, imagine the hidden lights of your own brain firing in patterns that machines might one day trace. Imagine signals moving from thought to screen to arm without a word spoken. The boundary of mind and machine is thinner than we once believed. Tonight, you have seen the EEG's rhythms, the MRI's images, the fMRI's maps, the implants that restore, and the interfaces that connect. You have seen that technology and the brain are partners now in discovery and in healing. Now, let your own brain rest. Let the machines go silent. Let the rhythms return to calm. And as you drift into sleep, remember, the future of the brain is not only biology, it is also technology. Together, shaping the next chapter of Mind. Tonight, we enter the realm of the mind that creates beyond the present, that shapes what does not yet exist. Creativity and imagination. The brain is not only a recorder of reality, it is also a painter of possibility. It takes fragments of memory and recombines them. It takes rules of the world and bends them. It takes silence and fills it with music. This is imagination, the gift to see what is not here. Creativity begins with networks. The default mode network, active when the mind wanders, spins ideas in the background. The executive network, center of control, evaluates ideas, selects what fits. The salience network acts as a switch, shifting between free thought and focused judgment. Together, they form a cycle of dreaming and shaping, of freedom and discipline. Imagination draws on memory. The hippocampus, that recalls the past, also builds imagined futures. The cortex, that recognizes patterns, also twists them into new forms. Every fantasy is built from fragments of reality. Art is the brain made visible. A painting is vision transformed by imagination. A poem is language stretched by creativity. A song is rhythm and emotion, entwined by neural harmony. But creativity is not only in art, it is in science. When hypotheses are formed, it is in problem solving. When new paths are tried, it is in daily life. When we cook a new meal, or tell a new story, or dream of tomorrow, imagination is also rehearsal. When an athlete visualizes a movement, the motor cortex activates, as if practicing. When a speaker rehearses in the mind, the language networks fire, as if speaking. The brain does not wait for reality. It builds practice in silence. Dreams, too, are imagination unbound. During REM sleep, the brain combines fragments, emotions, and memories. The bizarre stories of dreams show imagination at its most free, mixing the unlikely with the impossible. Creativity has its struggles. Sometimes the networks are too rigid, and thought grows stale. Sometimes they are too loose, and ideas scatter. Balance is needed. Freedom with focus. Play with structure. Disorders reveal the extremes. In mania, ideas flow endlessly. But without control, in depression, creativity may dim. But sometimes, sorrow deepens art. In schizophrenia, imagination may fracture, creating visions detached from reality. Yet creativity is universal. Children draw worlds without hesitation. Adults imagine futures in quiet. Elders weave stories of the past. It is not rare. It is part of being human. As you listen, notice your own imagination. The images forming now. The possibilities drifting by. This too is TR. creativity alive in you. The world itself is shaped by imagination. Cities, science, stories, all began as thoughts in a brain. Without imagination, there would be no culture, no progress, no future. Tonight, you have seen the default mode network of wandering, the executive network of focus, the hippocampus of memory and future, the dreams of REM sleep, and the art of daily life. You have seen that imagination is not a luxury, but the essence of mind. Now, let your own imagination soften. Let the day's images drift away. Let dreams take their place. And as you sink into sleep, remember, the brain that recalls the past also invents tomorrow. In silence and in dreams, we watch the brain, not in thought, not in memory, but in motion. The brain in action. Movement begins in the motor cortex, a strip across the brain, where each region guides a part of the body. The hand, the face, the legs, all mapped in detail. When you decide to move, neurons fire here, sending commands downward, through the spinal cord, into muscles. But the cortex is not alone. The basal ganglia, deep within the brain, shapes movement into smooth flow, initiating action, preventing unwanted motion. The cerebellum fine-tunes every detail, adjusting balance, coordinating timing, making motion graceful. Together, these regions turn thought into fluid motion. Even the simplest act requires orchestration. To reach for a cup, your eyes guide position. Your parietal lobe maps space. Your motor cortex commands the hand. Your cerebellum adjusts grip, all in fractions of a second, all without conscious thought. Skills are built from repetition. At first, movements are clumsy. Attention is needed. Error is frequent. But with practice, synapses strengthen, circuits refine. The action becomes automatic. This is procedural memory, stored in the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. It is why you never forget how to ride a bicycle. Even after years, athletes and musicians show the brain in its mastery. A pianist's cortex lights with movement and sound. A dancer's cerebellum times steps with perfection. Training reshapes networks, carving patterns deep in tissue. Action is not only external. Speech, too, is movement. The tongue, the lips, the larynx, all guided by motor circuits. Language is thought made motion, air shaped into sound, sound shaped into meaning. Disorders of action reveal the system. In Parkinson's disease, the basal ganglia falters, and movement slows. In cerebellar damage, balance fails, timing is lost, gestures grow unsteady. In stroke, one side of the body may weaken, revealing the map of the cortex. Each disorder teaches us how action is built, but the brain adapts. Therapy, practice, and plasticity can train new circuits. An injured hand can be aided by the other. Lost functions can sometimes be regained through effort and time. As you listen, notice your own body, the rise of your chest with breath, the stillness of your limbs, the rhythm of calm. Even now, your motor circuits are active, guiding breath, holding posture, keeping you at rest. Movement is the visible face of the brain. It is thought translated into flesh. It is intention made real. Tonight, you have seen the motor cortex, the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, the learning of skills, and the grace of practice. You have seen that action is not simple muscle, but the orchestration of circuits. Now, let your own movements grow still. Let your muscles soften. Let calm remain. And as you drift into sleep, remember, even in stillness, your brain is in action, guiding breath, guiding rhythm, guiding life itself.